Okay, today we're doing form principle. What does it mean? What are we referring to? What are we talking about? And what's its value? Okay, so let's just break down the simple language. Form principle. Form in human design is referring to, let's call it the vehicle. Let's call it the hardware of something. My physical form is a great way for you to integrate what we're talking about here. And principle, think about it a little bit meaning like first, as in the form comes first. The vehicle comes first, the physical form. Now, when you're looking at your body graph, the form or design side of the body graph is the side that is done in red, typically. The traditional body graph colors are red and black for design and personality. Design is also called form. Now, within form, what we're really saying today with form principle is that we're not looking at the personality side of the body graph. We are looking at one particular aspect, ultimately half of the quantum that is you. When we juxtapose the design and the personality, today we are separating those two things and we're only looking at design. The form, the vehicle, really the vessel that is going to get you through this life. Now, one of the important things to acknowledge about the design or the form is it is unconscious. The body has its own innate intelligence that you don't necessarily understand through the same lens that you're used to looking at your personality consciousness. You know, when we think and we make decisions, we have a rational reasoning. That's not the same as the unconscious awareness of the body. When we're saying unconscious, we're saying you're not thinking about a lot of what your body is up to. As in, are you thinking right now about how you're breathing? Are you thinking right now about how to get your heart to beat? Are you thinking about a lot of things to do with your physical form? No. Now your form, your design, your vehicle, your body, this is the first aspect of you that was built. If you've seen the origin and value of the human design system video that I did, I talk about the design crystal that creates who you are. Now I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what we call substructure, which is below the surface of the body graph ultimately, because this is where you're going to kind of dive into the specific ways that your form wants to be supported. Now, along both sides of the body graph, you're going to have the same repeating sequence of symbols. The numbers are not going to repeat necessarily. The numbers represent the gates, but the symbols are going to be the same down both sides. And what we're really going to pay attention to today are the top four, but only on the design side. Now, the sun, the earth, the north node, and south node are all going to have numbers with them. The first number that you're going to see is the gate number. Then there's going to be a decimal point, and that's going to represent a line number. Now, on the surface of everybody's body graph, any body graph you get will show you that level of information. But a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is going to live a little bit deeper than that. So this is where you will require an advanced version of your body graph that is going to give you elements of color and tone. So what you can't see on the surface, when we said there would be a gate, a decimal point, and then a number, that's called the line level. But what you can't see is that beside that there's a decimal point and another number, a decimal point and another number. But the way that you see it is you're going to see gate, then line, then color, and then tone. Now if we start at the top and we look at the sun and earth, they will be different gate numbers, but they will be the same line number. That's very interesting. Now, what that's really referring to is your unconscious profile line. I myself am a 3-6 profile. The 3 is the decimal point on my personality side, but the 6 is the decimal point next to the sun and earth on my design side. In particular, in my case, I'm a 64.6 and a 63.6. So those gate numbers were different, but the line numbers were both 0.6. Now that means that my body's profile is a 6th line. My body is going to go through a 6th line process. Now beyond that profile line, we had a decimal point, and then the next number is going to be representing color. The next one after that is going to be tone. Now in the color spot in the design, sun, and earth, what that is actually called is determination. And determination is the way in which your body is meant to feed itself. There are 6 different types of determination, but there are subtypes of each of those. Each one can be broken into 2. And when it's broken into 2, ultimately what it's really referring to is leftness or rightness. Near your design sun and earth, there will be a symbol. It will look like an arrow. Now an arrow is only what you call it just by recognition. It's not actually the name of what it is. It's just symbolizing what that little thingy is. There are 4 variables, and today we're only talking about 2 of them, the 2 that belong to the design side. If your dependent design variable is pointing left, you have an active brain. If your dependent design variable is pointed right, you have a passive brain. So when we talked about the design sun and earth, they have the same line number, and then they will have the same color number next in sequence. And that color is talking about determination, which is the way that you are meant to eat in order to nourish that active or passive brain. There are 6 different types of determination, but ultimately you can break them down into these 2 subcategories of leftness or rightness. Now really all of this information so far is actually laying out a strategy, because you're not at the destination point of what the point of all of this is. What you're really trying to get to is that next decimal place. We had color, and then we have tone. Now at the tonal level, what we are really referring to is something called cognition. Now in the beginning I said the body is unconscious, but it doesn't mean that it's unaware. Your body has its own internal awareness, but awareness is something that has to be developed, whether it's conscious or not. And the way that you develop your cognition is by feeding your brain correctly. Now, I tend to put things together through my own mechanics. I'm personal view. Now, for my own mechanics, I am a 6th line body with a 1st color determination and a 2nd tone cognition. That's my bodygraph's way of telling me that if I nourish my active brain according to a consecutive diet, I will enhance my taste cognition, and taste is my body's greatest sense of awareness. Now I'm going to very quickly name the 6 different types of determination, the way in which you nourish the brain in order to activate the cognition. So a 1st color determination is appetite. A 2nd color determination is going to be taste. A 3rd color determination is going to be thirst. A 4th color determination is going to be touch. A 5th color determination is going to be sound, and a 6th color determination is going to be light. Now I will quickly go over the 6 tones that are being enhanced by feeding the brain according to its determination. The 1st tone is smell, the 2nd tone is taste, the 3rd tone is outer vision, the 4th tone is inner vision, the 5th tone is feelings, and the 6th tone is touch. Now the reason that I went from here to here to here is because I'm going to give you some advanced awareness on what awareness center the cognition belongs to. There are only 3 awareness centers in the body graph. They are the spleen, the ajna, and the solar plexus. Now they are developed in a binary in terms of senses. we have 2 senses per awareness center. The spleen was smell and taste. The ajna was outer vision, inner vision. And down here in the solar plexus, we have feeling and touch. And to make this even more elaborate, complex, and advanced, I want you to notice that there was everything on the left side. There were 3 of them on the left side, and there were 3 of them on the right side. And really what we're separating there is a little bit of a pattern that will show you whether or not you have the active or passive brain. You don't have to see those little arrows in order to know which way they're pointing. If your tonal level is in 1, 2, or 3, you're going to have a left pointing dependent design variable. Now, if your tone was 4, 5, or 6, you're going to have a right-facing dependent design variable. Active brain, passive brain. If I want this form to function as well as its potential allows for, I am going to nourish my brain the correct way, which means either for active or passive. And I'm going to do it according to my determination so that I can enhance my cognition, which is my body's natural level of awareness. All right, now I want to offer a little bit of practical support. That was a lot of terminology. Something I really struggled with in the beginning of this, and something I wish I had been told. Determination is very often seen as like your diet type. Ultimately, it's telling you how to eat. Now, the way that we live in this world is very like, we have external authority figures. They tell us what to do. They tell us what's right for us, what's wrong for us. Most of the reason why anybody actually finds human design and gets interested in it is because they realize that it is giving them the keys to their own awareness to become their own authority figure. That's the beauty of human design. Well, it gives you a framework to work within to actualize your own potential. The core authority in it isn't the language, it's you. When you figure out what your authority is and how to use it, it's really giving you the power that you've been missing your whole life to feel like you are in charge of your own life. You are kind of responsible for what's going on here. Also, it means that it gets a lot harder to play the victim, because with more awareness you have, it's like you are more in charge. You are more responsible. Now, one of the things that happens is as you start to play with your design and you start to decondition your design, you start to become aware that a lot of how you've been doing things isn't actually how you were meant to be doing them. It doesn't, and you realize that not because somebody tells you, but because things don't feel good. You know, one of the most important awarenesses I want to give to somebody, as soon as they become aware of determination and this idea that it is a diet type, you know, depending on where you learn your design, determination can be approached in a very pop HD kind of way where it says like, here's your diet type. But they're not really explaining much about why your diet type is what it is and what it's doing for you. That's why I put such a heavy emphasis on the fact that your determination ultimately is how you access your cognition. Determination is a stepping stone to get to the cognition, your body's awareness. Now, when I first heard about my determination, consecutive appetite, and I looked at the source-based information about what that meant, it told me to eat one thing at a time. That was a very foreign concept for how I had been either fed or feeding myself throughout the entirety of my life. And the idea of simplifying things down to one ingredient, I mean, ultimately, I had a lot of questions right away, like, do I just eat chicken? And like, for how long? And does it have to be totally digested out of my body before I eat something else? And am I supposed to eat chicken for like a couple of days or there were so many questions about how do you do this? Because right off the bat, you know, you find this thing that you're told is supposed to make you feel better. It's the way that you're supposed to function. And a lot of us don't want to do things wrong. We're sick of doing things wrong. And especially if you're a third line like me, like most of how you live your life has been wrong. You know, it's a failure over and over again, where you're meant to learn what doesn't work. So here I am sharing my third line, not failures, but what didn't work for me was just referring to determination as a diet type and being told like, you need to eat this way without an understanding of why. But none of that even came close to mattering as much as what I'm about to say now. When you are ready to eat according to your determination, you won't have negative feelings about it. You won't be like, oh, I don't want to eat that way. It won't seem like bad news. It won't feel more like, oh, I have more rules to follow. Like when I did this in the beginning, it was like one thing at a time. Okay. And you know, I constantly make the joke about like hating eating the bag of peas. Peas, they were just peas, you know, and it was like, this is one thing, but it hurt my stomach. It didn't taste good. It wasn't what I wanted. I was like, how can this be right? How can this be right if it doesn't feel good? And that's the answer. It's not right if it doesn't feel good. It's not one of those things where you can just jump into it and completely change the way that you have nourished your body, especially if you're like, you know, 30 years old when you find this information. God forbid you're like 50 or 70 when you find this information. There's a good chance you have been nourishing yourself in a very conditioned way, not the way that is really, really meant for you. And so through your deconditioning process, you will slowly align yourself to the way that you are meant to be eating. And it will naturally start to happen. It's one of those things where you're like, whoa, I'm eating way more consecutive. I'm eating way more simply. I didn't think about it. It just started happening. And it mostly started happening in that I started rejecting things that were too complex, that were too many ingredients. It wasn't about going, all right, you know, clear everything off. I'm starting here and I'm only eating one thing at a time. It was much more like eating too many things at once became less and less and less appetizing to me. So think about what your determination is. Do you have negativity or resistance to eating the way that your determination is described to you? Well, what's the opposite of what your determination represents? And watch that. Watch how those things kind of change. You know, if you're a low sound determination, instead of trying to control what you think should be low sound, start to notice how you naturally, the more you get into your experiment, start to reject things that feel like too much sound. How has too much sound impacted your diet? And how are you moving away from those things? Because if you move away from your opposite, then realistically, you're moving towards what you're meant to be. Okay, so we just covered the brain, and in relation to the brain, determination and cognition. But what I want to talk about now has more to do with the overall body instead of the brain within the body. And so where we're going to look in the body graph now, we're still in the design side, the form side, but we've gone from the sun and the earth, and we're now moving down into the north node and south node. The north node and south node also have a variable attached to them. And what that variable is called is your independent design variable. The brain up top with the sun and earth was the dependent design variable. Now we're down in the north node and south node, independent design variable. Now the difference here is we've moved into the setting, the place that the body feels the best in, where the body is going to encounter the least amount of resistance to living out its life in the right story and setting. Now on the printout of your body graph or whatever you got, there's a good chance it says environment. What environment is referring to is the color below the line in the gates associated with the north node and south node. Because I always use my own for examples, my independent design variable, my north node and south node, I have gates 29 and 30. 29 and 30 together as the gate, decimal point, then there's a line. I am a second line. Now what I really want to pay attention to is the color below the line. The color below the line is what represents your environment. Now there are 6 different environments and there are subtypes for each one, and that subtype is based on leftness or rightness. Now when we were talking about the brain, the leftness was active and the rightness was passive. You can, in a way, apply that to environment, and you can say whether or not the body is active in its environment, or is the body pacified in its environment. But those aren't actually the correct terms, they're just concepts that help you integrate what we're talking about. The correct terms are either going to be observed or observer. And we can use active and passive to integrate this a little bit more, because if you are active in your environment, you're giving people something to watch. The point is that you are stimulated into activity, which is something that other people like to observe. So if you are observed in your environment, it's because you are stimulated into the right activity. If we had a right-facing independent design variable, what we would have is an observer. Now, if you are watching something in an environment, really your eyeballs are kind of the active part, not so much the body. You can kind of lean back. I don't know why I don't lean back more. Probably because I'm left in my environment. I'm all like, ooh, ooh, like I'm busy up here. I've got a focus going on. If I was right in my environment, I probably would be more like this, making content. When you are right in your environment, you know, this pacified element is more that the body is relaxing. The body becomes more observant of the setting rather than stimulated into activity in the setting. You should be getting pretty used to hearing 1 to 6. There's 1 to 6 for the line, 1 to 6 for the color, 1 to 6 for the tone. You notice how I'm going from the bottom to the top, as in the foundation, to the on the roof role model. There are so many words that we use that help us understand, process, integrate exactly what we're talking about. So quickly, I will cover the 6 different types of environment. We've got caves. Number 2 is a market. Number 3 is the kitchen. Number 4 is the mountain. Number 5 is the valley. And number 6 is the shore. Now, if you want a further breakdown of that, I've got another video called Intro to Environment. Hop over to that one. When you put your body in the right kind of environment, when you feed your brain according to the correct determination so that you can enhance the body's awareness system, your cognition, your best sense that you use to become aware, your body's intelligence, when all of those things line up, a beautiful thing happens. It's called less resistance. Resistance is not a human design word. I mean, it is a source-based word, but you don't have to know human design to know what resistance means. Resistance means something is harder, something is more challenging. I describe this one like, you know, walking into the wind or biking into the wind, as in you are fighting against a force that is trying to put you in a different direction. Resistance, if you want to be deeper about it, resistance is wearing down the vehicle. Rust on my car is resistance. It's the breaking down of what I am. I want you to think about the opposite of what you are. If you put yourself in the wrong environment always, and you never feed your brain correctly, and you don't get to enhance your cognition, What you have is a body that is struggling, a body that isn't healthy, a body that is not functioning optimally, a body that is oxidizing faster than it should. That's not a nice vehicle to get you through the rest of your life. There are religions that have phrases like, the body is a temple. That is honestly a pretty nice saying because it shows a high level of reverence and respect for this vessel that has to get you through this life. Your mind, your mind where your passenger lives, it's along for the ride in the vehicle that is your body. That passenger only gets to go on a ride as long as this vehicle is working. When the vehicle stops working, that's death. Many of us, we take our health for granted. We wear ourselves down. We abuse our physical bodies in ways that we don't really want to acknowledge or be honest about. And I'm talking even like the simplest of everyday things, like trying to push through things that you really don't have the energy for. Working too much, working too long, working too hard. There are so many ways where we take advantage of our health until something happens and we have to make big changes. And there's a lot to do with the body where you can only damage it so much. You were born hopefully quite healthy. Beyond that, it's a game of trying to maintain what you have before it eventually deteriorates and you lose it. That's what aging is, And the thing about substructure, the thing about something that is below the surface of the body graph is that it's kind of a hidden level. And when I say hidden, I don't mean like, gate kept or kept from you. It's hidden in the sense that you kind of have to unlock each level at a time. And until you unlock strategy and authority, determination, environment, cognition, those things they're not really going to matter. They're not as accessible. What's really accessible in the beginning is strategy and authority. If I'm consistently going where I'm not recognized and invited, I'm going to end up in the wrong places, doing the wrong things with the wrong people who don't recognize me. I am not going to have the support to live up to my potential. Through authority, I get to make my decisions about whether or not this is the correct thing for me to be engaging in. Strategy will get me invitations, right? But then my body has to go, is this healthy for me or not? And if I consistently ignore those two things, I'm not going to be able to access my substructure that allows me to use form principle the way that it was meant to be used so that I could support myself, so that I could live up to my potential. My personality crystal, my mind, it doesn't get to live a life. It doesn't get to experience an incarnation unless it has a bioform to be in, a physical form to incarnate with. We spend a lot of time thinking about what we are, what's right for us, and yet this is the body's life. This is the body's game. This is the body's trip. You are in a bioform, and the quality of the life that you're going to live depends on whether or not this bioform gets what it needs to live out its potential. Strategy and authority are always going to come first. But below that, we have substructure. And in particular, you have the color that belongs to the sun and earth in the dependent design variable. That color is for determination. It's how you feed yourself. And you don't need to pay attention to that until you're already doing strategy and authority. And the funny thing is, when you're doing strategy and authority really well, you'll notice that these things naturally end up sorting themselves out. When I follow my strategy of going where I'm recognized and invited, and I follow my authority of saying no to things that aren't healthy for me, I naturally ended up eating more according to my determination. I naturally started rejecting the things that were toxic for my bioform. When it comes to environment, environment is not important until Saturn return. And what that really means for anybody who is like, what is Saturn return? It's not about what Saturn return is, it's about when it happens. And we're talking 29, 30 years old. That's when it's really important to get your physical body into the appropriate setting that it's meant to have its life happen in. I'm a markets environment. At 29, 30, I got divorced. COVID happened. We went into lockdown. Markets internal is my environment. And what that really means is I make transactions from home. And that's exactly when this business started for me. And I've been way more successful in my life ever since. Form principle is going to teach you how to respect this bioform that is the vehicle for you to live your life. So I hope, again, I have just sent you on another journey of discovery. What's your determination? What cognition does it turn on for you? What environment are you supposed to live in? How do we remove resistance from your physical vehicle? How do you achieve your form principle? Go play with your experiment and find out.